Need to press. Wonderful. All right, so I'm pretty much going to follow the agenda that they have set out. So you're welcome to follow along with that to see where we are at. A brief overview of the case study. The Columbia flight was broken up on re-entry where everyone perished, and due to a large piece of foam breaking off during the launch of the shuttle, and it struck the wing and damaged some of the TPS tiles. So there's evidence that lack of proper communication, poor judgment, lots of different things contributed to this issue not being resolved when it should have been. So we will start with where are they? If you could narrow this issue, what the issue was, down to a few single words, what would it be? What would have been the ground level cause, the root cause?
For me, it is the shock. The phrase that there's so many phrases that shocked me, but to me, what I boiled it down to was the philosophy of prove me wrong, and then that led right into hubris. So to me, that was the main issue. Is they were too smart for the room. And so because of their hubris and their culture they created, it did not lend itself to, like I said, when I read, by the time I was done with this, I was like, are you kidding me? Because it just seemed like they just kept ignoring facts because it didn't fit whatever their narrative was, whether it was the schedule, whatever it was, if it got in the way of something that was already supposed to happen because of a timeline, it was, well, it's not as bad as we think it is. And so I think that to me was the big thing. Hubris, and then just that philosophy of prove me wrong.
All right.
I think that a short sentence can be, don't normalize the dirty things. I think that we don't normalize the things that happen in that moment. They say, okay, it's okay. And all the troubles happen, so it's okay. But that was the error for that time.
I agree.
NASA's culture was not flexible.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that in a corporate environment. It was not flexible at all. It was too rigid. And when you find rigidity in any environment, the tendency is for you, some of the tendencies is that you will not respect people's opinion. That's something about rigidity. Yeah? You don't respect any other person's opinion. If what anybody thinks doesn't fall within that silos, that little thing you believe in, then you won't respect it. You won't give heed to it. You won't consider it. And that's what put NASA into a problem. I think it was their culture, that corporate culture they had, didn't have respect for people's, didn't make their operations flexible.
They only valued collaboration when it fit within a narrow scope.
Exactly. To be candid, I was so shocked that could take place in a place like NASA. I was shocked.
Well, as I said, when I was done, I was angry. I was angry, especially, and I will tell you what infuriated me the most was at the end when two different officials said, "Well, what does it matter? We can't do anything anyways."
Right. Right.
And I'm like, didn't you watch Tom Hanks? Didn't you watch that movie? I mean, that was NASA when they had flexibility, when they were, I guess when you think about it, it's like a lot of things, certain cultures, if they're autocratic, like a bureaucracy is, in their infancy, they're okay because they're growing and they're learning and I mean, look at our federal government, for example. Our federal government back in the day, you know, when it first started, it was just learning. It was just, you know, but now it's just this Goliath that just feeds on everything, you know, and just sucks the life out of the room, you know. And so I think that's the same thing that happened in NASA. In the beginning, they had that agility to say, let's hear different, you know, well, this is the big thing for me. The big difference for me was, and this was actually when you read the part that talked about the history of the foam.
Yep.
And then when you read what in the beginning, the primary focus was on the safety of the astronaut. But as Seda said, as time went on, if that focus on the astronaut, they became too much of a bureaucracy, where it was, well, if we focus on this, we're going to lose this deadline. And if we lose this deadline, then we have to move our launch window. And then we have to lose our launch window, we lose this funding. It just seemed like over time, that bureaucracy became so entrenched that there, like you said in Duca, there's just such rigidity that that there just could not be any, you know, the NASA of the 2000s didn't even look like the NASA of the early 1960s. Didn't even look like it.
Point. That's so true. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's sad when you think about it, because, you know, two batches of astronaut teams were lost because of people.
Yeah, they lost their lives. Just very
Yep.
little thing, you know,
Yep.
very, very little thing.
4 degrees
That,
was
know,
the first one. 4-degree temperature difference.
Right.
The guy said these O-rings don't work well under 40 degrees. Show me the proof. Show me the proof.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. And it was, he's like, nope, you shouldn't do it. It was 36 degrees. And then when they did the investigation, what was the cause?
Exactly, that was the cause. Yeah.
Because the O-rings didn't make the seal and the hydrogen leaked. And didn't we learn anything from the Hindenburg? I mean, hydrogen doesn't do well when it hits open air in a combustible environment.
Absolutely.
You know,
something as simple as that, you know. So
well, and then when you read the other part, you know, when the tile hit, well, not enough cameras because, you know, budget cuts.
Right.
So budget cuts were more important than people's lives.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, hey,
when they had rules at the beginning that says, do not do this.
Yep.
You know, if this
but again,
is this,
hey,
do not do this.
And it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, their attitude, because it just seemed like, when you read, as you read in the case study, their philosophy became, well, we've had so many successful launches.
Right.
They didn't even bother to look at the data that, which they alluded to at the beginning, that their turnaround window kept expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a reason why it kept expanding, because of all the damage from the foam hitting the TPS tiles. And it couldn't connect because their culture was such that there could not be it couldn't fit in that realm, because it's just foam, not a big deal. It's not labeled properly. It's labeled as a non-issue on a piece of paper, and so it's a non-issue. Yeah, it's
yeah.
Not that I won't get angry tonight. I'm just passionate.
We all know that you will get angry again tonight.
I don't get angry. It's just passion. But it's because I think how many other things in our system of government have happened the same way.
Yeah, and that's why you're so angry, is because this is validation from what you're seeing all the time now. Right. Yeah. Because
again, the reason I guess on my frustration is you think things happen because of benign unintended errors, you know, because people do make mistakes, you know, but when you're told to do something, but you do it anyways because you have a launch date to hit, and disregard, you know, it's an acceptable risk to lose people's lives. Come on.
Right.
It'd
Exactly.
be one thing if it was, oh, we didn't know, there was no data, no one told us. That'd be different, because that, you know, that's, you know, But
That's still a learning stage. They've already
Correct.
gone past that. That's
Correct.
correct. So all of those things, everything that everybody has said tonight is actually a cognitive bias. And cognitive just means thinking. It's the way people are thinking. And in the agenda, it talks about 2 types of cognitive biases. The first one is called confirmation bias, which is our tendency to look for information that confirms our existing views. And that's exactly what Ben was talking about. Basically, you're taking whatever data you get and trying to fit it into your own mold, whether it belongs there or not. So were there any?
We see that every day.
Right.
Confirmation bias.
Mhm.
I mean, every news channel you watch, it's a confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Every new, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge for yourself. And it doesn't talk about this in the agenda, but I was kind of thinking, how often do we try to do that ourselves and in our own lives? I've kind of throughout the week kind of thought about that and tried to watch myself. And yeah, I do that. I think it's a natural tendency to do that. But we need to be aware of it. And once we are, we can correct ourselves, make those course corrections. What do you guys think about that?
Well, you see, when you this is a society. In a society, you have people. And it is important to always put at the back of your mind that because you're in the midst of people, and you must be respectful of other people's opinions and views. It's always very myopic when you look at an issue through your own eyes only. Just like you say, we have the tendency to always do that all the time. But, because you're not living alone, you're living with other people. So you got to think about that. You got to put that into consideration. So at the end of the day, if it's a situation where all of us need to make a decision as a group, so it's not going to be my decision. It's not going to be your decision. It's going to be our decision. That's what we should always focus our attention on. Our decision, not my decision or your decision, or not the way you view it or the way I view it, the way we view it. Okay, that can act as a guide for us, in all that we do. I know all the time we always try to present our own agenda, try to pursue our agenda. There's a natural instinct for us to do that. But we need to fight that instinct. We need to learn a better way of doing it. And like I said, since we're in a society, everybody counts. Yeah, so we need to view everybody's views before we say, okay, this is where we need to go. No, this is where I need to go. So that's why I see it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
For me, it's always a reminder that the truth is the truth and it doesn't have an agenda. And sometimes the truth shines light that what you think is not correct. And that's just the way it is. I think oftentimes the truth is inconvenient for people because it changes the narrative and they don't want to admit that. And so I think the key for me is, regardless of where the truth lies, it's the truth. It's a fact, regardless of where it lies. And I think the other thing that I always try to remember is that the end goal doesn't justify every mean to get there. If the mean I'm going to take to get there is at the expense of another individual, it's not worth it, and it's not appropriate. It's not ethical. So I think and it's hard because sometimes you want to get to a certain place, or you want that a certain agenda to, or whatever it is, you want it to work, or you want it to be right, or you want people to be on your team, and so we try to get persuade or assuade people to be in our teams. And there's nothing wrong with that, so long as the agenda, or so long as the purpose doesn't compromise our ethics or doesn't compromise our integrity, And I think that's one of the things we struggle with in our culture today. Is we're one of the biggest, I will say, this whole class, I've read the 7 Habits book twice, previously before this class. But one of the things I didn't focus on until this class was right at the beginning, where he talked about the change 150, for the first 150 years of our country, where we set up our ethics based on character.
Mhm.
And then we change them to be ethics based on personality. And to me, that was such an eye-opening thing, because if I look at society today versus society when I was a kid, I'll be 52 this year. So I was born in 1970. So I think of the things that we deal with in society today, and I think they never would have stood even a chance of existence in my time, because there wasn't the echo chamber. There wasn't the constant bombardment of what seems like views that are compelling but flawed. And so I just think that's important for us to, as like I said, as I've read this book again, it sorry, I was Spanish. Whoops. I just got a new assignment for church. I'm assigned our Spanish branch in the area. I'm their high councilman, so it's just like I speak Spanish every Sunday now. So, so for me, it's been kind of like a recommitment to myself to make sure that my ethics aren't based on a personality.
Yeah, that really stood out to me too. I mean, that more than anything in the whole book that did.
Yeah. Yep.
Because there's so much of the quick fix type of thing that it's really misleading. And I
think that's what NASA ended up becoming.
Yeah, that I think they tried to find the quickest fix,
Mm-hmm.
because deadline more than anything. And I think on a daily basis, I think it hides the truth. I think a lot of times, you said we need to see the truth. That's the first step. And I actually think that's the hardest, because
Mm-hmm.
these days you can't really see the truth very well.
I mean, there's definitely it isn't, I don't believe in coincidences. So there's a specific reason why President Nelson in his first address mentioned the importance of being able to have, use, and identify personal revelation. And he said, I mean, the warning was, if you don't figure it out, you will not be able to survive. I mean, that's a huge warning. It's not that, you may believe in something a little shady, No. He said you won't be able to survive. Yeah. Now, it could have been spiritually, not necessarily life-wise, but who knows, so I think that's the key is, have the barometer. I'll just as a side note, and then I'll be quiet for a little bit, because I know I'm bogarting most of your time. But if you ever want to get really scared about the future, go to the website, go to YouTube and look up deep fakes.
Deep fakes?
Yep. What these are is they actually have technology now that can change the face of a person in the video to somebody else's, use the voice and the language of somebody else, and you think it's that person talking. And there's no way you can tell a difference.
Right. That's what they said was used a lot in the last election, right? Like a lot of that.
So it's like, so again, you can't trust your eyes anymore. You really have to use that spirit to say, okay, is this, I mean, and to me, this case study just shows you the importance of not losing sight of humanity, the importance and the worth of an individual soul and a person, and are your choices and decisions negatively impacting that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the second cognitive bias is called the sunk cost bias, which is our tendency to escalate commitment to a course of action into which we have already invested time, money, and other resources. So you're on the road trying to get to your destination. you take a wrong turn, instead of turning around, you keep going faster on that road to see if you make it to your destination on time. And what's wrong with that? You're never going to make it. So what have we seen with that in this case study and in life in general, really?
Well, I mean, they were just so stuck on the next mission. You know, they just would lose sight of, you know, it'd be like, again, in the Columbia part of the case study, the running joke was that the Columbia shuttle was the hangar queen, because, you know, she spent so much time getting fixed up, and there was no cognitive click to say, hey, is there a reason why this one shuttle is spending so much time being fixed?
Right.
Is there a way we could mitigate that? Is there data? Is there video? Oh, wait, there's no video because, hey, budget cuts. We only have 5 cameras. You know, none of them are HD. You know, there was just it was almost like tunnel vision. And they had such a bias that they generated and created in their culture, because if there are no failures, then there is no risk. That's
right. They were trying to avoid failures,
right.
But that just led them to the biggest one of all.
Correct.
Really, it shut down the whole NASA. It shut down NASA, pretty much.
Yeah.
So these biases really have a long-term negative effect, and no matter who you are, if you're involved in these type of cognitive biases in yourself, you're headed down the wrong road, and you'll feel it at some point. So
Where you can see negligence. That's what I see all through NASA's operation. Too much negligence, you know. I just wish I just wish it never happened, you know. I'm trying to wind the clock backwards, you know.
right.
Hey, I remember sitting in class in 1986 in my government class, watching the Challenger take off and watching it blow up in front of our face.
Yeah, I watched that too.
And it was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like literally, your brain couldn't comprehend that really happened.
Right. I didn't think it was real at the time.
Yep, you're like,
what show are we watching? Because this isn't live.
well, and again, the other thing that to me that, again, this, I'm not going to make it political, so I'll be as very obtuse as possible.
Okay.
But this is, if this case study teaches us anything, it's, you can have the smartest people in the room who can't see the forest through the trees.
Right.
True.
That's a good
I mean, think of it. I mean, these are rocket scientists. These are high-end engineers and mathematicians. But yet the obvious escapes them.
Yeah.
And so to me, all right, I'll just tell you a story. Okay, take it for what it's worth. So I go to my doctor's 3 months ago. I walk in 7 for blood work, 7 a.m., super early, nobody's there. I walk in, just walk in. I get up to the front counter. The lady, her eyes become big like saucers. You're not wearing a mask. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't worn one for 18 months. Well, you got to get a mask on. And I literally looked at her and I said, we're still doing this? And she looked at me and I looked at her and I said, I have to be honest. This makes me question coming to you for medical advice. And now she's just a receptionist. So, you know, but I'm gonna talk to my doctor. I see him next week and I'm gonna be like, dude, come on. Look at all, I mean, Again, smartest people in the room can't see the forest or the trees.
Yeah, we see it all over,
It's
everywhere,
all
every
over.
day.
Every
Yeah.
level of business, every level of business, government, everywhere. You know, it's just, you know, again, what's another great example? You have all these people in wherever they are in Davos, Switzerland, planning the world out for us. And, you know, climate change is going to be horrible, but yet they all take private jets to get there.
Yeah.
Why aren't they on Zoom? Right? I mean, Zoom, they don't expel any energy. You know?
That's-
So I just, again, supposedly smartest people in the room can't see the forest or the trees. And I think that's for me, that was the big thing in this case study. It was just.
And that brings us to the next little bit, which all of your examples that you gave just now, especially that first one with the mask, is, well, it really shows what this is: shared cognitive framing, which is frameworks, beliefs, and assumptions that help us simplify a complicated reality. So every single example you just gave illustrates that perfectly.
I'll send you my Venmo. You can just send me the $5.
Yeah, okay.
But it's so true. I mean, it's because again, typically, what do we see? And again, typically, what do I see? I see a class of individual who feels that the common people can't understand a complex situation, whatever the situation is. So rather than try to treat us like adults and realize that we can be nuanced, you know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Right. You know, they think the sign "wash your hand after you use the bathroom" is for everybody. You know. And so instead of trying to help us and treat us like adults and go in a nuanced fashion, it's just like you said, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. You know, yeah. And it's like, well, we can reason, you know, yeah. We can. So, yeah.
Well, you know, history has taught us that what do the masses do when a complicated reality, when they're confronted by that? Mm-hmm. They all want a leader. They all want to be told what to do. And that's what's happened time and time again. And that's hard when the leaders who are telling you what to do don't know what they're doing themselves. They don't.
Or have a different agenda.
They do. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, is have a different agenda. And that, I think, was what was happening in this this thing that we read too. But yeah, you see that all over the place too.
I was so shocked when I read the case study that you know, the DAT team sent the email, "Hey, can you reposition this?" 5 days later. Mm-hmm. And then what was the end? Yeah, what was the end result? You see? The end result was you didn't. Those of you who like the movie Office Space, the result was you didn't fill out the right TPS report. And the issue was not that, oh my goodness, we need to reposition a government satellite. It was, you didn't follow the right procedure to request that satellite.
Proper protocols, yeah.
Right, and then what was the flight manager's attitude? Well, you know, it would just take too much time out of the schedule to reposition the shuttle to sea, and you know, what can we do anyways?
Yeah. And Duca, you looked like you felt very deeply about this issue.
Oh my goodness! You know when the president commissioned the Rogers Commission to look into NASA concerning that crash, that is when we discovered what had been happening in NASA for years back. Yeah. You have a pimple in your head, and it's just one pimple. And then the next time you have two pimples, it doesn't make any sense. Before you know it, you have people all over your face. Now you start thinking, how did they come about? There was so much laxity all along. We wouldn't have known what happened in NASA if we're not for that committee. They just, you know, this thing doesn't matter, you know. It happens in companies too, you know. Let's leave it, you know. It doesn't cause any problem. Before you know, something else happens again. Just gradually, over the years. And because you have this perception and attitude, you become docile, you know. with every new revelation, become docile. It's the same sensitivity you show. And before you know, bang, 7 people are dead.
Yeah.
You lose a crowd that is worth how much? 20 billion or whatever in building. Come on.
It's the whole frog in the boiling water. You know, you just put the frog in the pot of water with the heat off. He thinks everything's great. He's swimming in a pond. And then just you gradually turn that stovetop on, and just 10 degrees at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it gives you a good, I mean, again, this case study is also a great learning opportunity of the importance of independent oversight.
Yes. Yes.
Because it wasn't until that committee happened that was an independent committee, because I'm sure they had oversight, but it was all the people in their same echo chamber who did the oversight, you know. So it's like, you know, this looks fine. You say it's not an issue. I guess it's not an issue, you know, because you have to remember they were partnered with McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and all these other companies, and they had these little groups. But yeah, just I mean, there's a reason why Elon Musk is sending rockets and people, and Bezos's people to space and bringing them back for a fraction of the cost of what NASA could do.
When data show that 87% of the time, you know, the issue caused by the foam problem, 82% of the time, because I did the calculation, there was always a problem. 82% is very high.
What was it, like 65 out of 72 of the flights?
Out of 79.
Yeah, 79, yep.
Man.
Maybe there's an issue.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we should try it some more.
But you know what? It's just foam. You know, it's just foam.
Yeah.
You know, the thing we hate when we get a package in the mail, you know, and we got to clean up the peanuts because the kids run through and grab the box because they want to play, you know. That's all it is, just foam.
See, at the beginning, when they started all these missions, the foam was a big deal. It was a big deal that it was hitting, but it did it so much, it became so normalized that.
And with every successful landing, they're like, well, it must not be an issue.
Right.
They won't check this. Okay, why is this happening? Let's look at this first. Let's check it. Why is this happening?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, like I said, no one even put the pieces together and said, hey, why did the turnaround time from the last shuttle take 10 days more than the previous shuttle? No, it's there was no analysis. It's almost like there's a quote we used to have in business where I worked, and it was analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they analyzed so much that they were just paralyzed by their own data because it didn't fit a narrative.
Right.
And so rather than address the data, which was inconvenient and may cause retooling, and then they'd have to admit that the smart people aren't as smart, we'll just go, last one landed successfully. We're good. Just order more TPS things to put tiles to put on there. We'll be good. You know, we'll be fine. Yeah. This is why I don't like smart people. If I could figure this out.
Yeah, because the little details, they don't always think about it, you know.
I could figure this out.
That counts the most.
Come on.
Yeah.
This is why, I mean, I read a lot of books about stuff like this just to get angrier. Because if you read history and stuff, there's so many times in our nation's history and other nations' history where things like this occur. And you wonder, well, what happened? And you read and you're like, are you kidding me? Did no one put 2 and 2 together to figure it out? And they're just like, well, they thought it was fine.
Yeah, hindsight though, right?
Oh yeah, no, and that's the benefit of, you know, if we relate it to the scriptures, that's you know, for me, that's the blessing of the scriptures, is we can go back and look at, well, if I do this could be the possible outcome. So maybe I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You know,
look at a scenario like this. When I can't remember his name, when he asked the Department of Defense concerning if they could use their camera. The manager never responded.
Mm-mm.
And it got to the stage, they found out that it was important, and nobody could say, okay, who sent this message? They were looking for who. It was so surprising. Who asked for what? And
'Cause it
because
needed to be
nobody
the
could
right
respond, they
person.
just closed it.
Yep. Yeah.
With such high caliber people, I'm so surprised. I'm telling you.
Right.
Now, I'm still so surprised that that could happen.
So that's kind of one of the questions too. It says about the people in this case that were, who are the important contributors to this mission failure? Whose fault was it?
Oh dear.
And that's just too loaded of a question. to
Well, but
me.
I think to me, the fault relies on those who had the ultimate responsibility to, who could affect change. You know, that mission control manager who didn't look at his email for 5 days.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
though, so to me, you know, the person who chose not to establish the DAT team as a Tiger team,
Mhm.
like they did in Apollo 11 or Apollo 13, it was called
Yeah.
the Tom Hanks Apollo.
Yeah,
You know, because if that individual would have established that DAT team as a Tiger team, I don't know if those people would have been saved or what they could have done, but at least then that team would have been that central focal point.
right.
But instead, as you read the case study, you realize that they didn't even consider themselves a real team, because they met informally and because they were not empowered with any authority to enact any type of analysis that would result in change. So to me, it's all on the leaders who had that ability to either establish the DAT team as a Tiger team or to affect change, you know, to really make a difference. Whether it was during the whole, years of the foam, saying it wasn't a big deal, the O-ring incident, those people who said, yeah, we're going to disregard the scientists who created the O-ring and said, don't, the guy who actually engineered the O-ring said, don't fly because it's under 40 degrees temperature wise. And the people at NASA said, we're good.
Right.
Because you have no data that shows that there'll be anything wrong that happens, other than you telling us that the ring doesn't work good at 40 degrees or under 40 degrees. So to me, those are the people I fault.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody in this list, almost all 50% of the people in this list, are blamed. All of them.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
They are all accountable.
Yep. Yeah, anybody who said it wasn't an issue is an issue.
Uh-huh.
Something that happened is that, and several times, the persons can't talk. Well, they don't want to talk because they feel that their opinion is not important. And we don't know what happened, but maybe some of them people could think about that error that happened. So we need to understand that our opinions are valuable, and we need to talk about with others about what we are thinking, because we don't know if our think or our thoughts in that moment can help to other person or help a community or a company to save the people or the things that they are doing. So that is a thing that happened very common, and we need to think about how I am express my feelings, how I am express my thoughts with the people that are around me, and I can feel that I am important too, and I can do my part in that mission in that moment.
Yeah,
That's
it said it. You know, the theoretical engineer who heard his views and tell them, tomorrow, don't lift. Don't lift. Why? This is my reasons. Oh, shut up. There's not enough reason. Okay. And then he shut up.
Mhm.
When you work with people, a group of people, and it's good you air your opinion. It's always very important you do that. But when they tell you shut up, we don't want to listen to you. You put your tail between your legs, and then you just go to a corner and stay. Yeah, because at that time, there's nothing you can do, right? There's nothing you can do. And it happens every day with people, when you're dealing with others. It happens every day. And they made his company look, they made that engineer's company look, well, until the company says, okay, it's fine, it's okay. Yeah, you can fly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That
and
is the importance to work in a team, to work all
Yeah.
together.
I think that goes back to the importance of individual integrity. Because if someone says no to you, or like you said, Nduka, if someone just says, shut up, we don't want to hear your thoughts, that's fine. But then to me, I've learned that then if I firmly believe something and I firmly am against something, I make sure and I say, that's fine that you'd like me to be silenced, but I would like to go on record right now that I'm on the record saying the choices you're making, I do not agree with, because I want to basically, I am not a part. I want to do. And if that costs me a job, it costs me a job. But that's where sometimes we have to, as people, what is more important, our integrity or a paycheck? And that's a hard decision. I know lots of friends who, during these past 2 years, have chosen integrity over a paycheck. And so I think that's something we have to think about very hardly, because the voices to silence people who have common sense in a business environment, when there's things that don't match because of, like we talk about here, because the direction that we're trying to go in doesn't really work or isn't ethical. If we don't say anything, then we're just as culpable and just as guilty, and it's hard because then, as you said, Seth, then you have to speak up. You have to speak out. And that is so uncomfortable, especially if you're the minority in the room and you're not on the side of the mass that wants to move in that direction. But I always remind people, it was only between 10 to 15% of the Americans that started the American Revolution. That was it. It wasn't everybody. It was only about 10 to 15% that said, yeah, we're tired. And then once this thing started going, then the other 20, 30% came on board. So sometimes it takes courage to stand for what you believe is right. Mm-hmm. And it may not be popular, it may not be comfortable, but to me, when you go to bed at night, can you sleep? If I worked at NASA and I didn't say something to separate myself, I would be haunted for the rest of my life by those 14 people that died.
Yeah.
I can't work in NASA.
Yeah.
I can't. Remember, they also had a culture where if
Mm-hmm.
you're in this position, you are not encouraged to write an email to somebody who is above you. Look at that. The engineers talked about that. So you can't complain to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't. You're discouraged. It's a culture. You cannot write an email to somebody who is above your level. So if I'm doing something with this person and doesn't seem to be going on well, I can't say, hey, boss, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So that also caused their culture is so stifling that it was very hard. The engineers were complaining too. It's hard,
Hey, can you imagine, you're a kid and you're a smart kid. Wouldn't be me, but you're a smart kid. And you grow up your whole life working in sciences, working in math, because your goal is to get to NASA. And you get into that culture.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? How disheartening would that be?
Yeah.
Is you've worked, because these people aren't just like a 4-year degree. They're at 12 years, of schooling. They've got PhDs and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. No social life because they've studied for 12 years, and they get into a culture that basically crushes your soul.
Yeah.
It's sad, yeah.
Yeah. So part of me is glad they don't exist anymore now after I read this case study, part of me's glad, which is so sad because I love that. I mean, I love space. I have a telescope that I can put my phone on and look at stuff and, I love space. It's so intriguing to me. But after reading this, I'm like, such a disillusionment. It was kind of like when I went to the Dominican Republic for my mission, and I realized that that's where Christopher Columbus landed, not in America. And I literally said to my companion, my whole education was a lie. The whole thing was a lie. Because if I can't trust a teacher, he never landed in America.
Yes.
I'm like, come on, it's all so to me, how disheartening and disillusioning is that to know that behind the beauty of NASA and all the whole, I mean, think about it brought hope to a nation coming out of a world war. John F. Kennedy's speech, it brought hope and aspiration to a nation, to then result in bureaucracy and bias that caused the death of 14 heroes. Because astronauts are supposed to be the best of us. Watch the right. If you've never watched it, sometime in the winter, log some time with the movie The Right Stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-hour movie, 4 hours. But you watch that and you read these. They're the best of us. Another great movie, Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen Hidden Figures, love that movie. It's a great movie. But again, it's the best of us. And then we read this and it's like, it's the worst of us.
Yeah, it's very disheartening.
Well, like Induka said, this behavior it goes on in a lot of places.
Yeah.
A lot of companies. I worked for companies that were like this. You're in the break room in another manager in another department. You're just talking casually. All of a sudden, your team leader, your manager's in your cubicle. What are you talking to them about? The football game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? You really sure? Are you sure? It's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've worked in those kind of environments, and it's just not. Like you said, it just stifles you. It's like you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Well, the very last thing that we're just going to mention is just think about this. I'm going to say a few things. Let's see, four things. And I want you to think, did NASA portray these things? The first one is clear boundaries. Were there clear boundaries? Was there compelling direction? Was there structure? Was there a system that supports the team in completing their work? Did NASA show any of these things during this episode?
Some of them, but not in a good way. They had structure. That was the problem.
Too much structure.
I was talked about in the beginning, the rigidity.
Right. I think one of the biggest problems was the direction. There wasn't anywhere. So
and Sadith brought up the last one, which they didn't have at all, which was a system that supported the team.
Right, absolutely. That should be number one.
There's no support. Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got for tonight. So we can stop.
I think I have next week.
Do you?
Week 8. I think that's me.
Okay.
Like I noticed that I can go watch the Space Shuttle Columbia Disaster Part 2, The Final Descent, and I almost don't want to, but I'm going to. It's kind of like a train wreck, like you don't want to see the car accident, but you got to slow down.
Right. I don't know.
It's like, This after a weekend of watching Memorial Day movies,
Yeah.
And then you read this.
And then I read this and I'm like, come on. Just got done watching, the Sands of Iwo Jima,
Oh.
Yeah.
bunch of John Wayne, the Green Berets, and I'm reading this. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and stop the recording and
Okay.
then we'll discuss it.
Then we'll have our real discussion.